April 21st, 2025. The world stood still as the bells of St. Peter's echoed across Rome, marking the end of a chapter unlike any other. Pope Francis, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the first Jesuit and the first Latin American. The first pope to truly redefine what it meant to lead with humility had passed away at 88. But for many of us, his legacy wasn't just written in speeches or declarations. It was charted in flight paths. It lived in quiet runways, crowded tarmacs, and the skies between continents. His mission didn't stay behind Vatican walls. It took flight. Literally. This isn't just a story about planes. This is about Shepherd One. Not a specific jet, but a symbol of something much bigger. A vessel of presence and a platform for peace. A winged chapter in the story of a pope who made the sky his pulpit. As we begin to explore the iconic papal flights, go ahead and hit subscribe. Here, aviation is more than just engines and airspeed. It carries meaning, mission, and moments that change the world. So, what was Shepherd One? There was no gleaming Vatican jet in a private hangar, no papal equivalent of Air Force One waiting on standby. When Pope Francis flew, he did so humbly. Aboard commercial aircraft, chartered, yes, but shared in spirit. For decades, it was Alitalia that carried the pontiff out of Rome. In the later years, that role shifted to ITA Airways. The aircraft varied from trip to trip. No fixed tail number, no custom livery. Just a standard airliner, made sacred by its passenger. Still, the world came to know it by a name, Shepherd One. It was never an official designation. You wouldn't find it painted on the fuselage or logged in ICAO databases. But among air traffic controllers and journalists, the name carried weight. It echoed with reverence. Like Air Force One, it wasn't about the machine, it was about the mission. Seats up front were reserved for the Pope and his close advisors. Behind them sat members of the Vatican press corps. Dozens of reporters scribbling down history as it flew by at 30,000 feet. And somewhere in the cabin, quiet and unassuming, was a man dressed in white, holding his own black carry-on. He didn't demand opulence, he didn't fly in luxury. But still, wherever he landed, red carpets were rolled out. Honor guards stood at attention. Choirs sang. Heads of state waited at the stairs. Not for a politician, but for a presence. Because when Pope Francis stepped off that plane, it meant something. Not power arriving, but grace. And those flights weren't for prestige or personal gains. Every single journey was for his people. Over the course of his papacy, he visited more than 60 countries, logging millions of miles in the air. But his destinations weren't chosen for ceremony. They were chosen for need. He didn't go where it was easy. He went where it was hardest to go. Each flight became a kind of mission, a quiet declaration that the world's forgotten corners were not, in fact, forgotten. In 2021, he boarded a plane bound for Iraq. It was a journey many believed could never happen. Years of war, persecution, and instability had left cities in ruin and communities fractured. Yet there he was, stepping off a plane in Baghdad, walking among the rubble of Mosul, and praying with those who had lost everything to ISIS. It marked the first time a pope had ever set foot in Iraq. His message wasn't political, it was deeply human. We have not forgotten you. In South Sudan, a nation bleeding from years of civil war, his arrival came not as a solitary envoy, but as part of a united front. Alongside leaders from the Anglican and Presbyterian traditions, Pope Francis traveled into the heart of a divided land to plead for peace. He also journeyed to Myanmar as violence escalated against the Rohingya people. While political sensitivities hung heavy in the air, Francis moved with the weight of compassion. He met with refugees, he listened, he spoke softly but firmly about dignity, mercy, and the right of every person to exist without fear. His presence there, amid unspeakable injustice, was not a political rebuke. It was a quiet insistence on humanity. For the people waiting behind barricades, waving flags from crumbling balconies, or simply standing in silence, his arrival wasn't just symbolic. It was healing. It said, "You are not alone." So what happened when the Pope decided to fly? Let's take a quick peek at all the behind-the-scenes action. To the outside world, it may have looked like any other flight. A commercial jet taxiing on the runway, flanked by protocol and press. But behind the cabin doors of Shepherd 1, there was something different, something quieter, holier even. Papal flights weren't adorned with luxury. Pope Francis had no private suite, no golden fixtures, no first-class curtain shielding him from the world. He sat up front, yes, but in a standard airline seat. His luggage? A simple black carry-on, always carried by hand. No extravagant protocol or entourage. Just a man preparing to land where pain lived. The front rows were reserved for his closest aides and security detail. Minimal, disciplined, discreet. The rest of the cabin, often filled with journalists from around the world, transformed into a kind of flying press room. These reporters didn't just cover his arrival, they traveled with him. They witnessed the in-between moments, the silence, the gravity that often fell between one mission and the next. Mid-air, Francis would sometimes speak with them, softly, humbly, often informally. He answered their questions not like a head of state, but like a pastor. There were jokes, there were pauses. Sometimes there was prayer. He knew the weight of his words, and yet he never used the aircraft as a pulpit. His press conferences often continued for more than 20 minutes, where he answered the eager questions of his interviewees continuously. Even the aircraft crews seemed to feel it. Flight attendants, pilots, engineers, all reported a shift in the air. Not in turbulence, but in atmosphere. Some described a stillness. Others described it as a privilege. No matter where he flew, the details were surprisingly consistent. When Pope Francis boarded a plane, it wasn't just about the flight. It was about the logistics and careful selection of aircraft. Depending on the length and nature of his trip, a variety of aircraft were used, ranging from smaller short-haul planes to large, long-range airliners. Each choice was rooted in practical necessity, with a focus on ensuring comfort, safety, and reliability. For many of his shorter trips within Europe, Pope Francis flew aboard Airbus A320 family aircraft, often provided by Alitalia or ITA Airways, the official carriers for Vatican flights. The A320 is a staple in European aviation, known for its efficiency and ability to service regional routes. It was ideal for Pope Francis's European journeys, as these aircraft typically have a range of about 3,300 miles. Perfect for traveling between Italy and neighboring countries in just a few hours. These flights were often quick, with minimal need for any special configuration, except for ensuring there were appropriate accommodations for the Pope and his entourage in the forward cabins. For longer, more international trips, like those to Asia, Africa, or the Americas, larger aircraft were necessary. The Boeing 777 and Boeing 747 became the go-to aircraft for these long-haul journeys. The Boeing 777, with its capacity for long-range flights and a cruising distance of up to 9,000 nautical miles, became an essential part of papal travel, especially when crossing continents. One particularly memorable journey was Pope Francis's visit to the United States in 2015, where he flew on a Boeing 777 with American Airlines. While this wasn't a customized papal aircraft, the airline made special accommodations for him and his entourage, ensuring the aircraft was prepared to meet the needs of the pontiff. On other long-haul journeys, such as his visit to the Philippines in 2015, Pope Francis flew on a Boeing 747, the iconic jumbo jet. The 747, with its immense size and extended range, was a fitting choice for these kinds of journeys. Its 2 aisles and spacious configuration allowed for the comfort of a large delegation, and the aircraft's range made it possible for the Pope to travel long distances without needing multiple stops for refueling. The Boeing 747 became synonymous with papal travel during many historic visits, including his travels to Latin America and his trips to Africa, where he often flew to multiple destinations in a single trip. For certain journeys, Pope Francis also flew aboard Airbus A330 aircraft. The A330, like the Boeing 777, is a wide-body, twin-engine airliner capable of covering long distances. It offered a blend of comfort and efficiency for the Pope's extended trips to places like Sri Lanka, Kenya, and Mozambique. The A330 was often used for papal missions in Asia and Africa, where the need for a reliable aircraft with a spacious interior was essential. The special configuration of these aircraft ensured that the Pope and his aides had the necessary accommodations to meet the demands of his travels, and the flight crews often commented on the significance of carrying such a revered figure across the skies. In every case, the flight itself was secondary to the message that came with it. These aircraft, whether an Airbus, a Boeing, or another model, were simply vessels for a much larger mission. They were the means, but the message they carried was what truly mattered. In the end, Shepherd 1 was never really about the aircraft. It wasn't the make or the model that mattered. It wasn't the seat configuration or the airline logo painted on the fuselage. It was what the flight represented, what it carried, far beyond people or luggage. Each journey Pope Francis made through the air became something deeper than transportation. It became testimony. Every time Shepherd 1 lifted from a runway, it told a quiet truth that the Church did not belong to the powerful or the privileged. It belonged to the suffering, the forgotten, and those who had stopped expecting anyone to show up. Pope Francis made the air his ministry, not to escape the world below, but to reach it. What are your thoughts on Pope Francis's unique travels? Do you think the way he approached these flights reflects his leadership style? Share your comments below.